If you had an Amiga during the 1980s, it was your girlfriend. What am I talking about? I'll let you know in a minute. Last week our good retro friend Invader did a really nice video on the lowest Amiga 500 serial number he's ever seen. I think it was number 190. So I thought I'd follow up on that video and show you the earliest Amiga 500 I have in my collection for the Commodore Computer Museum. And without dragging out this whole video, I'll show you right now the serial number and also how to identify an early serial number Amiga 500 if you're looking for one yourself. So after we look at this machine, we'll do a quick look at this very rare Amiga 500. There's something very special about it, and you won't find any photographs of it on the internet or on YouTube. Very, very rare. And I'll show you that later on. Particularly interesting for fellow Amiga fans, of course. So we'll have a look at this Amiga 500 right now, the serial number. I'll show you right now. So it's number 6. 00000. I think it's right. 6. Well, as you know, I'm trying to put together a Commodore Computer documentary here in New Zealand because Commodore Computers had a very special relationship with New Zealand. It was very similar to the relationship with Germany with Commodore, but how Commodore was set up in New Zealand and how it was run was very unique compared to the rest of the world. So I want to share that and all the amazing stories that have happened over the years with Commodore as well. For that documentary, I interviewed former directors of Commodore Computers New Zealand and also former staff. Through those interviews, I found out that the first 10 Amiga 500s were sent to New Zealand for some reason. They don't know why, but when the guys in the warehouse found out they had serial numbers 0000001 to 10, they approached management and said, look, what should we do about this? It was discussed about doing something special. Nothing eventuated, so they ended up going down to the distribution network and they were sold to dealers and then on sold to the public. After those interviews, I spent a year buying and selling early serial number Amiga 500s, trying to track down one or two of the first 10 Amiga 500s. So what was my whole point about that? If you had an Amiga 500 in the 1980s, it was your girlfriend. I almost forgot to mention all this. So in 1981, Commodore released the VIC-20. Now, in my previous video, you would have seen that the year before that, they released the VIC-20 as the VIC-1001 in Japan with Japanese characters. The VIC-20 was known as the friendly computer. The Amiga took that to a whole new level. Amiga in Spanish means female friend. The Amiga 500 was your girlfriend, which makes sense, a good analogy, because you would have spent a lot of time with your Amiga 500, you would have enjoyed playing with. We'll finish that analogy. It doesn't pan out very well. Let's have a look at the features you need to look out for if you see Amiga 500 for sale on eBay, Trade Me, or whatever selling format. Now, of course, in the day you could ask the person to flip the computer over and check out the serial number, but if you want a potential bidding war on your hands, well, you may not want to do that. So if there's any photographs of the top, what do you look out for to see if it's an early serial number Amiga 500? The first thing is the chicken head or chicken lips or the Commodore logo key. If there's a Commodore logo here, well, most likely this is going to be an early serial number Amiga 500. Now, I must admit, they can range anything from 1 to 20,000, 30,000. So not guaranteeing the top 10 or top 20 or top 100, but it does give you indication it's a low serial number Amiga 500. On the opposite side of the spacebar is the slanted A Amiga key, but you'll notice that it's actually a smaller, solid A, while later Amiga 500s had a larger, hollow slanted A. So there's two indications straight away that this is an early Amiga 500. The next indicator is the LED light on the caps lock. It's larger, has a hashing pattern on the LED. So it's larger than usual and also has that hash pattern on the LED. So Commodore produced 3 different keyboards for the Amiga 500. They produced the Samsung, the Masumi, they also produced this one here, the original one, which was the high-tech 725 switch keyboard. If we pull one of the keys off, this random keys fine, I'll just take off this one here. Oops. There we go. That's the high-tech 725 mechanical switch for the key, and each key has an individual one of those. Now, the great thing about these keys is that they're mechanical and they're very high quality. The nickname for these switches is called Space Invader switch because it looks like a Space Invaders character, doesn't it? In China, the nickname for these is Angry Bear or Furry Bear. I can see that as well. In the Western world, the nickname for the high-tech 725 switch was the Space Invader switch. Very high quality and weren't used in later versions of the Amiga 500. So I'll just put that back for a second. When you type on this keyboard, it's beautiful. It just feels really high quality, and it's because it is. If you try typing on newer or later editions of or versions or revisions of the Amiga 500, they were spongy. These have a real nice mechanical feel about them. It's a really nice keyboard to use. Really nice keyboard. Now the next thing to look out for are the keys themselves. If you see on eBay, Trade Me, or Buy, Sell, and Swap, or any other location to buy an Amiga 500, and you still don't know what the serial number is, but you see the Commodore key, you see the A solid, smaller, slanted Amiga key, the keys themselves actually give away that this is actually an early release Amiga 500. Because you notice these keys are not discolored. They haven't turned yellow. I haven't actually even cleaned this up properly yet. But the keys look in really good condition. And that's because the early edition Amiga 500s used PBT plastic for the keys. And it's a very high quality plastic. Later versions, as you know, used ABS plastic, which discolors in UV or sunlight. So why did Commodore change from using very high quality keys to using cheap keys in later releases of the Amiga 500? It came down to convenience and money, of course. So PBT plastic is very hard to mold, and ABS plastic is very easy to mold, so it's common sense to use ABS plastics instead of PBT plastics for the keys. So it was convenience and cost saving. So we'll open this up. Just like other Amiga 500s, there's 6 screws to undo to open this up. Oh, they'll come out eventually. And just get these last ones at the back. I must admit, I've not used this overhead camera before, so I'm not even sure how much you're getting in this picture. So hopefully you've seen everything. I might have to redo it, I don't know. So hopefully this screw, I've got it. Okay, we'll turn this back over. And we'll carefully take that off. Well, I'll just undo this. Slide out this. Ow! Okay, I just climbed underneath the desk to get this screwdriver. There we go. Okay, so that's what the early Amiga 500 looks like. My understanding is, and we'll have a comparison look in a few seconds, this looks pretty standard, but the PCB no doubt looks more golden. Actually, I'll just make sure the lighting's okay. The PCB has more gold on it than a standard Amiga 500. That's my understanding. We'll do a comparison just to have a look right now. But I think everything else looks pretty standard. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now if we compare that with the later Amiga 500, I'll do a side-by-side comparison so you can see what they look like together. They do look very similar. I think they look pretty much exactly the same. The PCB does look a little bit greener than the early edition Amiga 500. So this particular Amiga 500 would be of particular interest for fans of the Commodore Amiga, and for anyone else it probably is not a big deal. So what's so special about this particular Amiga 500 that I use as a comparison? I don't know if you can see. Now I'm going to have to sort of slant the camera properly. This is a revision 7 Amiga 500 board. So the revision 3, well, not so common, but revision 5, 6, 8, very common on the Amiga 500. Revision 4 and revision 7, very, very rare. All the Amiga 500s, of course, were nicknamed a B-52 song, the Rock Lobster. Each Amiga that came out, up until the CD32 at least anyway, had a B-52's song as their code name for the PCB or for that particular model.
Welcome to your daily dose of Commodore Computer Shorts. What's the connection between Commodore computers and the American new wave band of the 1980s, the B-52s? When you open up your Amiga 500, the motherboard has Rock Lobster, the title of the B-52's 1978 single that was their first Billboard Hot 100 hit. And when you open up your Amiga 600, Junebug from the B-52's 1989 album Cosmic Thing, famous for their hits Love Shack and Rome. And when you open up your Amiga 1200, Channel Z, the first single released from the B-52's Cosmic Thing album in 1989.
So hopefully you can see this okay. As I mentioned, this is the first time I've used this overhead camera system, and I'm just guessing I've got this right. So here's the early edition Amiga 500 keyboard. That's that high-tech 725 series keyboard, and this is the standard ABS, that's made of PBT plastics, and that's the standard ABS plastic keyboard from later editions of the Amiga 500. So as I mentioned about the Commodore key instead of the Amiga key, and the small solid Amiga key instead of the hollow larger Amiga key, the two indications that this is an early edition Amiga 500. But you can see the color of the keys. These don't discolor in sunlight or UV. ABS, of course, you know, does discolor. And you'll notice, as I mentioned before, the caps lock key is bigger on the early edition. It also has that hash pattern on the LED as well, while the new versions or the later versions did not. So smaller, larger. That's the main indications that there's something different about these other Amiga 500s. So hopefully you found that video informative and interesting. If you want to get access to 100 plus exclusive videos, check out the membership join button down below. If you enjoyed my video, please like it and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.